And clear of the closing doors, please.
What up, son? What up? Grind and Pivot, Louis Max, Queens, New York. Today in the house, we have an award-winning author, bodybuilder, Twitter weightlifter, and everyone's favorite meathead. I've done my work. John Finkel in the house. Johnny, baby, how are you?
I'm good. I mean, everybody's favorite meathead. I should have T-shirts made up of that. And bodybuilder is very generous. I think I would be one of the most. I'd be a natural, but half the size of the bodybuilders. But I'll take it. I'll take it.
I know. I wanted to give it to you. I don't worry. I'm going to hit you hard later. Just be careful.
Okay, good.
Be careful. I have some other things that I heard about. So no stone will go unturned.
Bring it.
Anyway, so you're an author. You've written many different books. I have one that's called The Life of Dad. You have a new book out called 1996, the year in sports that will get you chronicled. We'll talk about that a little bit. But when I was digging through a little bit, you worked on one of my favorite shows, and some people that are working out listening out there, The Man Show with Jimmy Kimmel and Adam Carolla. Tell us what was that like? How did you get that gig, and really, what were those two characters like?
I got to tell you, all my days of working, being a juggy spotter for the trampoline shoots was really something I had to figure out a way to get through. I mean, when you talk about really overcoming obstacles in your career, I was able to fight through the day where I had to stand around a trampoline while 16 or 18 bikini-clad girls were bouncing up and down for 6 hours. So, they put you through the ringer with things like that.
Excellent.
They were great guys, actually. I got the job. I was actually working as a PA right when I out of college for this place called the Hollywood Center Studios, which is where they shot The Man Show. And I actually started working there prior to the season that I got on. I was clearing out the set for Mad TV, if you remember Mad TV.
Sure, absolutely.
So it was the same. They shared a lot. They rotated it. Half the year was Mad TV, half was The Man Show. I was just, you mentioned the weightlifting and garage stuff. I was just a hump carrying junk. Like I was emptying out the desk, clearing out the offices, clearing the soundstage. And when I was starting to move things into the offices after we cleared them, it was people's things. And one of the offices I set up first was this big office. And one day I walked in and it was Jimmy Kimmel sitting there and Adam Carolla sitting there, and their producer Daniel was sitting there. And I had my Celtics on that now. I had Red Sox hat on then, and Jimmy's a big Mets fan, so we started just kind of going back and forth. And this is again not like late night superstar Jimmy Kimmel. This is still like win Ben Stein's money 1 year, The Man Show Kimmel. So I know now he's still super approachable and cool. He's a very cool dude, and always has been. But back then it was a little more collegial. There was no big like star power. We were just kind of giving each other shit, and so after doing that for a couple of weeks of just showing up in their office a lot. I realized that they were staffing up, and I was just a PA out of school. I had no experience, but there's production assistants on every show. So I asked, I think it might've been Adam, if I could be a production assistant on that show. And he's Adam. I don't care who brings me coffee. He was just like, whatever.
Right, he was cool. Right.
Yeah, he was cool. So I got that switched over, and then I spent the year on the show doing various things that probably nowadays would never make it to air.
I was going to say, hilarious, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, they had great writers. I mean, Sal, cousin Sal was a writer on the show, and Dave Damashek, who's at NFL Network, was a writer on the show, and Jordan Rubin, who's the director, was on the show, and Sarah Silverman hung out around the show. And so there was just talent, a lot. Carson Daly was always there for some reason. And so there was just a lot of those people there. And I hate, it's not one of those where you learned a lot. I learned a ton about Hollywood. I always wanted to write. I didn't know if I wanted to write for a show like that. While I was working on that show, I started pitching stuff to a lot of the magazines that I wanted to maybe write and work for, the Sports Illustrated, Men's Fitness, Men's Health, those kind of things. And I started getting hits on those magazines and assignments. And so I worked for them for that, I believe for Crank Acres for a year and a pilot. And then the next season came around. I just started really having success writing for Men's Fitness. So I went to write for
Gotcha. Right. So you started out, you're obviously, I know you're just from Boston. You're a big Sox fan, Celtics fan, and Bruins. Of course, I'm a Knicks, Rangers.
Polar opposites.
Knicks, and Yankees completely. Yeah, exactly. But, listen, I got to respect, big respect to the Celtics, of course. Bruins back in the day. I mean, when you were, you probably your old man was like was your old man a big Boston fan? Like
Yeah, I remember
Cheever and
growing up, it was
Cashman and all
like,
those guys.
yeah, it was like Ray Bork and Andy Moog and, Cam Neely. Like those were the guys I grew up. I remember I moved, we were in Boston from like third grade to eighth grade. So my formative years of
What town? What town in Boston? What town?
we lived in Shrewsbury, Mass,
Okay.
when I was that age, and then we moved to New Jersey. Actually, my very first day in high school. So when you talk about our polar opposites, I had a horrible little kid Boston accent. Hey, how are you? All that into like the lion's den of North Jersey of like you said. All my fandom was put to the test the whole time, trying to.
Right.
Every one of my friends was Yankees fans or Mets fans. Almost
Patriots fan too. Were you Patriots fans also?
Yeah, I was a Patriots
Pats,
fan
right?
when I went though. They were 2-14.
Yeah, they sucked.
Hugh Millen was the quarterback. They were miserable.
Right.
We had like a 4-game pass every year. You'd freeze your ass off at the old Foxborough on the aluminum seats, and they were awful. There was nothing good about the Patriots other than it was like a place to go get hot cocoa as a kid.
Right, exactly. So you got to Jersey, and when did the writing bug get to you? I mean, did it get to you early on? You went to James Madison, right? You went to James Madison University, right? So when did the writing bug really get to you? What was like the first pivotal moment with the writing?
Yeah, I think the first pivotal moment with the writing actually was reading. Like I really, really, the one thing I've had that question a lot, and I can't think of the time where I was like, I want to write right now. This is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. I read so much, so many books, biographies, autobiographies growing up. All the way through high school, I played football, I swam, I played all the sports, but I was a reader. I was probably one of my only friends who actually read consistently real books. I'd go to Barnes and Noble and hang out. I'd go to the library.
Where'd you get that from? Your folks?
My dad read a lot, and I'm not knocking the kinds of books here. He traveled a lot, so he was reading like the mass market, Tom Clancy paperback. So books were always around the house, but even more importantly, Sports Illustrateds were always around the house. Back then, the sporting news we had around the house. I grew up in Boston reading, probably the greatest lineup of sports writers of all time with Jackie Mack and Bob Ryan and Lee Montville and James Shaughnessy. It was the greatest, even outside of.
No, legit, they were legit. Yeah,
legit. They were like the murderer's row of writers for sports writers. Then we moved to New Jersey. Obviously, all my friends, it was like Mike Lupica, and you're reading all these guys. And
no comment, right? I know.
So, but that's who was there, right? So, I realized that would be a very cool life, to write about the sports, travel, go to games. And so, when I was in college, I got a little bit of like maybe screenwriting, maybe books. I didn't really, in college, you're like, I'm brilliant. I could do all this stuff. And so I moved to LA. If I wanted to do screenplays, it was there. If I wanted to write for TV shows, it was there. And I just ended up having all these ideas. I read a lot of like Writer's Digest, like a writer nerd that I am. And I was like, you know what? I could actually write for magazines. Like I read so many magazines, and that's how it got started.
That's interesting. Yeah, wow. Now you had these dreams when you got out to California. You basically went out to try to quote unquote make it. Or what was the plan once you bolted to California? Definitely
to make. Well, I said the first plan was to get out of winter. Right. I wanted beach. I grew up watching Side Out. I grew up watching Saved by the Bell. Like I wanted the beach. I wanted the ocean. So I moved there. I lived in Hermosa Beach. Like I just wanted the lifestyle. I wanted no winter. I wanted to surf and learn how to surf and play beach ball. So that was like my number one.
1 second. Hold on 1 second. That's perfect because, you always want somebody to give you the fastball down the middle when it's coming. So you were an average volleyball player. You went from shit to bad, correct?
I got to play on like a couple C circuit tournaments, maybe some B tournaments.
Exactly. Now what happened with the surfing?
I sucked at surfing. Now here's the thing. Anyone who learns to surf, let's say after age like 20 or so, you realize that you really should have learned like skiing or something else or skateboarding when you were like 8 or 9. You just don't have the feel. You're falling as a grown human, not as a kid.
Cognizant of
the falling in the ocean, and so you'd surf. And I would say for a long time, I went regularly. I committed to it, and I got comfortable on like shoulder height waves. But what I realized was that for the real surfers who like would check Surfline every day, and my friends who I met out there, when they would be like, "Let's go! It's a big surf day." It was too big for me. Like I couldn't handle the 8 or 10, anything overhead. No way. Head height. All right. But I was best off season. I was a really nice, like, oh, there's 4-foot ankle slappers out there. I can ride those in and I can ride those back all day long.
Let me get out there. So that morphed into what? Ocean swimming,
Ocean swimming. Yeah.
Which you really, that became legit, right? What was that like?
Yeah. So ocean swimming is crazy. So I swam.
Still doing
I was like,
it, right?
oh,
You still doing it? You still doing it?
I am. They've canceled most of the races the last couple of years because of COVID and stuff. And then when I lived in Dallas for a while, so we were away from the ocean. So I did a few lake swims, which are not nearly, they sound what they sound like. It's like, oh, a mile circling around a lake is not nearly as cool as like I jump in the water at Hermosa Beach for the pier-to-pier and come out of the water 2 miles later at the Manhattan Beach Pier. Like, that's cool. Ocean swims are crazy. You know, you get into it, and the rule of thumb is always, if you're swimming and you hear the dolphins and you hear the seals, especially in the Pacific Coast, and if your hand touches something like sandpaper, you probably already got bit. But if it's nice and soft and rubbery, it probably has a dolphin, so you're okay. Right. but it was fun. I swam in high school. I was really good. So I was actually probably by far my best sport, legitimately like all state, all county swimmer. I tried to swim in college a little bit, but funny now that I get up every day to like lift at 5, but back then getting up at 5 to swim and all that stuff, as a walk-on was just not my thing.
Yeah,
so
competitive swimming is brutal to begin with, and you have to be not that you're not dedicated, but you have to be super dedicated to that and that. I think just that only, it's almost like tunnel vision.
Yeah, for sure.
So you started writing you started writing books basically. So how did that just come about that you actually said, I'm gonna start writing books and get them published as well, right?
Yeah. So the impetus for that was when I started writing for the mag. I started writing for Men's Fitness. My first article that I sold them was on how to dunk a basketball. I wrote my lead was, I'm white, I'm 5'11", I'm 23, I've never dunked before, and I'm going to do it for Men's Fitness. And I went to UCLA and found their strength coach and found their conditioning coach, and went and found these jumping gurus, and I worked out hard, and I was able to do it. Not a lot, not in a game, but I was able to throw down.
Right. So you were able to. All right. So I'm a hoops guy for sure. I'm only 5'7", 5'8".
5'11". So
so you got 5'11". You had decent hops for.
I was athletic. Yeah, I was an athletic kid. I could run the 100. I threw shot. Like, I played football. I was never from the team sports side. Like, I was never awesome at any of those sports, but I was always like one of the fastest and one of the strongest. I probably should have been like a wrestler or something.
Yeah, I got you. So it's like a feat that you have to train for.
Yeah.
Ankle weights. What was the training?
Oh,
just like as a side note,
what
was the training to get? I mean, obviously, you could touch the rim on the regular, right?
I could grab the rim already, so I wasn't coming at it like scraping the net. So I really needed about 8 inches. Because I have big hands for not like a 6'5" guy, so I could palm a ball.
So you held the ball. That's
palming a ball can give you 2 inches on your jump. I learned.
Correct.
Like, it's actually like you just have to curl it over at that point.
Right.
It was crazy. I was doing brick jumps in the pool. One of the guys came up with, so it was bringing 2 bricks into the pool to do these crazy, like, where you have to get the bricks under the water, under the shoulder level, and learn how to swing your arms up, because your arms get like 30% of your jump. I was doing all these like fast twitch muscle things in the gym with dumbbells, where I was doing things like jump squats with light weights. Like, I looked like just a moron out there. And it was a cool program. It was like 3 weeks on, 1 week off to recover. And after the end of like 4 months or so, I did it. And unfortunately, the very second time I did it, I pulled my quad, of course.
Because I got hurt. I knew that.
First of all, I will say this as a white guy who never dunked and has only done it like 2 times. You're never prepared, and nor was I prepared for when you actually do it. You're kind of hanging it off. I'd never been that high. I landed hard. I had no frame of reference.
So the finish, it's like a gym. It's like a gymnast, right? It's like a gymnast coming off or a pole vault.
I came down on we did it at I did it at Venice. Those like the White Man Can't Jump courts at Venice, because I lived near there, and I was like, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it here. And it hurt like hell. And like the next time I tried to do it, I like pulled something, and then I never got back to it. But I did it.
That's so cool. So the books came. You wrote your first book after the magazine article.
Yeah. So I wrote. It's funny. Well, I bring up the dunking because I wrote for a lot of the magazines, and then I started writing for Yahoo Sports. And one of the things I did for Yahoo Sports was do like a first person, like updated George Plimpton kind of thing, like, doing experiences. And one of them was after Nate Robinson won, I think his third dunk contest. I interviewed him about like how regular people can dunk, like how long, because he's 5'8", so it was like, so we wrote that article, and I'd already written maybe 20 or 30 for Yahoo. And, sometimes you just hit it off with people. And I really hit it off with Nate. We got along really well and we stayed in touch. And that spring is when he went nuts. And for like 3 weeks, kind of was the number one story in the NBA. He single-handedly beat like Brooklyn, with the Bulls when because Derrick Rose got hurt that year. Then he played LeBron in the Heat, had like two of the best games. He had like that 24 points in the fourth quarter in overtime, beat LeBron the one game, like outplayed the Heat for like 2 games. And after that was over, I sent him a text and I was like, dude, you should do a book. Like from, he was all state basketball and football, Mr. Football and Mr. Basketball in the state of Washington, had full rides, could have played in the NFL. And here he is at the top of the, I won't say top of the world in the NBA.
No, absolutely. He's a freak. The guy was an athletic freak.
He was a freak. And so we did a book together and that was my first book.
I love a couple of the books. I know that you have a new one out, 1996. I do want to get to that quickly at the end, but one of my favorites is Life of Dad. And this is basically reflections on fatherhood from today's leaders, icons, and legendary dads, which is real interesting. Now, there's a great quote there, Dangerfield from Back to School. And just remember, the best thing about kids is making them. I love that. What's your favorite? What was your favorite anecdote out of that book?
So the book came from a podcast that me and my friend Art Eddy hosted for the Life of Dad brand, and it was basically it started out just interviewing any dads, and then sponsors started getting in. We started getting some bigger and bigger names, and then it went as A-list as it gets. Shaq and Dale Earnhardt Jr. and
Gaffigan,
Allen and
J.B. Smoove,
Michael Strahan, Jim
Chris
Gaffigan, Chris Jericho, Mark
Hamill. That was
Hamill,
classic.
It was crazy, and so my favorite actually interview was Carlton from Fresh Prince, Alfonso Ribeiro. So we were talking to him about being competitive. Like the book's divided into sections like tools and talents, and how to teach your kids how to have character, how to teach your kids how to deal with competition, all that stuff. And he was talking about how sports and being acting is exactly alike, but most people don't look at it that way. And he was saying how he always teaches his kids, look, I went up for the part of Carlton. There was one. There was no second or third place. There was no fifth best person who was going to play Carlton. There was one show and one guy. I don't want you to grow up thinking that you're just going to keep getting more opportunities, in terms of your one thing. There's winners and there's losers. Now, you can lose and win at something else. But there was going to be one Carlton, and I acted my ass off to get the part, and I got the part. And the reason he used that, he says, because kids now, there's sort of this, it's okay if you don't win, or if you don't win, it's not a big deal. And he said, look, certain ages are fine, but at some point when you get into the real world, if there's a job that's available, somebody's going to get it. They're not going to hire 2 people, right? If there's a project that's coming up, your team might get it, not 2 people. And I loved Carlton with, thinking of Carlton with the dance and from like dancing with Michael Jackson in the commercials and all the stuff, to the fact that he's like a stone cold competitive.
Exactly. Being so serious. Exactly.
I love it.
So he had the drive. Yeah. I mean, so your advice could be, you need to have the drive at some point in your life.
You just have to know that you are going to get to a point in your life where you're not going to get something. Somebody's going to get something and you're not going to be the one. And so he talks about all the parts he didn't get, but he always went into the mentality of, I have to get this part. There's only one of these, and I don't want to be the one who doesn't get it. And you win some, you lose some. But I just love the idea that teaching kids, like, hey, we're so used to the participation trophies and all that's fine for young kids or whatever it is. It's not a whole different debate. But we're used to making kids feel good about losing. And he said, I wanted it to hurt. I want them to know it sucks so that they'll work harder at the thing they want next time. And I just resonated with me.
Yeah, gotcha. You went on to write another book that I really liked as well, Jocks in Chief, which is fantastic, ranking the White House athlete from 1 to 10. I went through the whole thing. It was really, really cool. What did you take from that? I mean, who's your favorite in that? I'm just kind of giving like greatest hits of John Finkel until we get to the next round.
Oh, I appreciate it. So that book actually came from a smaller article that I wrote when I was at Muscle and Fitness. We did an election themed. It wasn't political, but it was an election themed issue in like 2008 or 12. The cover was this jack dude. It was said red, white, and huge. And it was like, the freedom of the bench press. And we just did a theme play on words thing. And I did a top 10 most athletic presidents piece. And it was huge. it got everywhere. I was doing radio interviews for it. It was this big thing. So I was like, man, this should definitely be a book. So I ranked all the presidents. I did an essay on every single president, not Biden, not included, because it came out before then, and I'll do him in a couple of years at the next election. But I went deep on the researching of like all the athletic or physical talents of these guys. And I learned some, like, you asked me my favorite thing is that Abraham Lincoln, like tall, scrawny Abraham Lincoln, as a kid,
Right.
was an absolutely badass, undefeated street fighter. Like he went like years without losing, took on
Really?
all comers. People that he worked for, like he worked in these shops, would have betting, like basically cockfighting out Abe Lincoln, bring on anyone you want to fight him, and he would just beat the crap out of him.
Like a Clint Eastwood. Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So you uncovered a whole bunch of cool stuff.
Really
writing
cool
that
stuff.
book.
Yeah. George Washington also was an undefeated wrestler. He was a grappling champion for years growing up at all the schools he went to. And yeah, you learned some really interesting stuff. John Quincy Adams was a regular swimmer, like throughout the year in the Potomac, nude, of course, but he would swim for 40 or 50 minutes every day, year round, to start his day at 5:30 in the morning in the river.
That's amazing. That really,
Yeah.
that's interesting. That's
The whole
actually-
book was interesting.
That's
Every
what's-
chapter
that's
had
interesting,
something like that.
And
Yeah.
we're going to put everything down. You're going to put all your links down in the comment sections below. 1996. Why'd you choose to write about that?
It's the year I graduated high school. And it's one of those things where every writer has like a notebook where they jot down ideas. And I had a page where I kept writing like, greatest sports year of all time or the most pivotal sports year of all time. And when something would happen, it would always, to me, I had my radar up. It would always be like 1996. So you'd be listening to something and be like, oh, the 1996 NBA draft class with, Ray Allen and Allen Iverson and Kobe Bryant and all these guys, and Steve Nash, right? And then, I'd be listening or watching something. It was like, oh, right, Tiger Woods made his debut in 1996. That's pretty interesting. And then, wow, The Rock and Stone Cold both made their WWE debuts in 96. And
Right.
the more stuff that came about, the WNBA started in 96 and the MLS started in 96. And you realize that it became, to me, this line of demarcation that, like, in a 1995 world, for the most part, diehard sports fans had no idea who Tiger Woods was, never heard of Kobe Bryant, really wasn't watching Allen Iverson, maybe if you were a little bit familiar with the Big East, but for the casual sports fan, no.
Right.
No WNBA, no MLS, no The Rocks, no Stone Cold. From a movie perspective, there was no Happy Gilmore, no Tin Cup, there was no Jerry Maguire. Like when you start going through it, like Shaq was still on the Magic, so there was no Shaq and
Right.
Kobe Lakers.
So
like,
you had the blanket.
all of
You had the blanket, man. You had the
Yeah, it just kept
blanket
coming.
with
I mean,
all of those squares.
Mike
Wow.
Tyson fought 3 times in 1996 after
Right.
his comeback and won the title, then lost the title. The Olympics were in 96 with the Dream Team, and like every time I looked, I was like, the whole sports world is part 2 of whatever part 1 was, has taken off from 1996.
Well done. Well done. Where does this energy come from? Tell us.
I don't know.
Tell us.
It's like the fear of the unfinished projects, right? It's like you get an idea, and the hardest part about being a writer is I got an idea this morning that I'm just beyond fired up about and excited about. It's not coming out till next Christmas, right? Like it's
Yeah.
such a delayed pleasure that the work is so behind the scenes. And it's cool with Twitter and stuff now. You can share your process and comment with other writers. And that actually has made it much more fun the last 5 or 6 years. But it's one of those things where you're thinking now, this project, okay, so, next Christmas it's going to come out. And what I just, 1996 came out this spring. I was writing it a year and a half ago, right? It came out for Father's Day. And so as you do these things, it's just, you want it. You only have so much time to write stuff. So you can't rush it. You have to do interviews, or, if you want to write fiction, you can do that too, which,
Sure.
I'm exploring as well. But it's like, you just have to get to a point where you're excited. If you're passionate about what you're doing, you don't really know why you're passionate about it. I couldn't tell you why I love to read so much. I couldn't tell you why I thoroughly enjoy a 2-hour writing session where nobody bothers me.
Yeah, I'm not
and
asking
moving.
why. I'm almost asking like how. It's like no, but you answered the question. I get it. You're passionate about it, and you're basically prioritizing and doing what you can. What's the story with social media? You dig it. You're obsessed with it. You hate it. It's a double-edged sword. You can't live without it. What's your take on that?
I use it for enjoyment, and I use it to like meet like-minded people. So I think goes for, I don't care, if you're on there for your specific things that you're into, that's helps. But this saved Twitter for me, because about 2 years ago, I was really wondering, and I've met so many people, and not only like, just regular people doing things like especially if you're an author, I bet you half the interviews I've set up with athletes that I've needed to talk to, or other writers that I've needed to talk to, or even like coaches and parents, have come through Instagram or Twitter. So it's an invaluable tool for research and for just general setting things up.
Networking.
Yeah, marketing, but even just, hey, I need to talk to Detlef Schrempf. How am I getting in touch with Detlef Schrempf? I'm going to see if I can DM him, tag him in something. I'm working on the Supersonics book. You get in touch with people. So it's huge for that, but it does become overwhelming. And about 2 years ago, I realized that what was ruining it for me, which is no surprise, is the politics of it. I just do not have any interest. I don't go to Twitter for it. I don't have any interest in 99.9% of people's opinions. I do not care about. So I went in and created a list of every possible person or word that could potentially lead to a post on politics. It was like 60 something long, 70 long. Every president, both sides, everything. And I put it into my mute and block. Lo and behold, my Twitter is food and weightlifting and music and movies and writing, and it's beautiful.
And girls on trampolines, I hope.
And girls on trampolines.
Right.
Yeah, Ziggy Saki.
No disrespect to Mrs. Finkel.
So anyway, so I love him. Now that I did that, it's far more enjoyable.
That's great. Johnny, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I know you got, your a tight schedule. You're a big macher out there in the world in South Florida. Last one. You golf?
I do.
Okay. Foursome. What for? I don't, but I'm going to ask this question because I was told it's a good question. No.
Oh, okay.
4 people you want to golf with.
Oh my God! Right now, are they alive, or is this one of those alive or dead, or anybody?
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't matter because Lincoln might be up there because you need him to be a bodyguard.
If I'm going to get a fight, it's Abraham Lincoln for sure. Wow, that's a tough one. I think I'll take, like, if you had to go with like one athlete, I think it'd be hard not to golf with Jordan. That's such a lame answer, but everybody would say Jordan. So
okay,
you could go with that. You know what? I'm going to scratch that. I'm going to go with Will Smith. I think he's played athletes. He's an athlete, he's been in half the favorite shows that I love. I'm going to go Will Smith. I think I will go with Jordan as my number 2. Am I the 4th, or I only have the 3 people? I'm the 4th in the foursome, right?
Yeah, you'll be the 4th. Let's get for 3. Yeah.
Okay, and then
unless you're going to be driving the cart, you want to go 4?
No, I don't want to be just. I'm playing.
Right.
I'm playing with these
guys.
You're playing. And you know what? I think in that group, as crazy I would be, like I'm going to go with Tom Brady.
That's impressive.
Will Smith, Michael Jordan, and Tom Brady.
I like
me. That's a hell of a force.
A couple of goats there, I would have to say.
Yeah, I'd say 4 goats right there.
Amazing. John, thanks so much. Your books are available on Amazon, all over the place, right? Anywhere you can get them. We're going to put all the links online below. And I want to say thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I could probably talk to you for days, man.
We'll do
Full
it again,
disclosure, don't know you, never met you, and you've been you've been super. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Hey man, I thank you. If anybody who enjoys what you're writing, you get along with, I appreciate your effort, especially the hard fought research, getting to know how horrible of a surfer I am. All those kind of things. We got to share that stuff. So
I went easy on you, baby. I went easy.
You did. You could have also talked about how I basically sat varsity my high school, barely even played, and I was a punter, and I wasn't even really good at football. But you just brought up the swimming, so
well, you weren't playing for Bosco, you weren't playing for Bergen Catholic.
No.
What am I going to?
Let's put it this way: they weren't Bosco and Bergen weren't knocking down my 5'11", 180-pound ass.
I love it, man. Listen, take care of yourself. You look great. You feel good. I hope you're feeling great. Love to the family, and
Thank you.
I'll catch you on social media a little bit, though, for sure. And I appreciate the time. Stay well, bro.
You too. Thank you.
Peace, man.
Closing doors, please.